Hi, guys, and welcome to this broadcast on this whole topic of gaslighting. We've devoted a whole series to this topic because it's an important issue for us to understand. Here's an interesting question to consider: are you vulnerable to gaslighting? Who is vulnerable to gaslighting? You might be surprised who that is, and maybe gain some insights on how to resist the efforts of those who seek to gaslight you. We're going to be taking a closer look at this topic, and we'll be right back. Here she is, my partner in crime.
Hello.
So, Karen Johnson. So, vulnerability. Did you ever think that you would be vulnerable to gaslighting?
Well, I don't know. I got gaslit when I was a teenager and was in a relationship. So yeah, it happened pretty early for me.
Yeah, bummer, huh? Well, hey, I mean, it's good that you've learned some valuable lessons with respect to that topic.
Yeah, I
You
think
know.
I'd stepped in it a couple times though after that.
Well, I hope that your gaslighting detection meter. I remember a few years ago at our house that at the gas meter at our house that I would walk by. It's on the side of the house along, and whenever I'd open the gate, I could always smell the odor of gas, there. And, and come to find out, and I think I knew this. I knew a guy who was involved in public utilities. They mix a component in gas, because natural gas you can't smell, but they mix a component called, I think it's aldehydes or something like that, which gives this nasty and very distinct odor that there's a gas leak. And so I called out the utility company, and they came out and they jackhammered up my sidewalk there and went down. But they had a detection meter. They just don't rely on their noses. And so they had a detection meter. So hopefully that we can equip you with a detection meter. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and we talked about this a couple episodes back. Is that you know if it stinks, you need to trust trust your senses. You know,
Yeah.
when something doesn't smell right, that and it was just actually in this case a very faint odor of gas. Well,
Mm.
okay, well, we're talking here not so much about natural gas as we are about gaslighting. And we're going to spare you
Same
from
thing, by the way.
huh? Say what?
Which are not the same thing, by the way.
Yeah, and we're gonna spare you from any inappropriate jokes. So, but but let's go ahead, and we will watch this video and then comment about people who are vulnerable to gaslighting.
There's people who are more vulnerable than others. Some of the most vulnerable people that have had a history with gaslighting parents or gaslighting siblings or gaslighting circles of friends or ex relationships or teachers or people that have gaslighted them, that gets in your history. And so now you're kind of wired in these patterns. Just nice, loving people are vulnerable to this because nice, loving people tend to be open and loving until they learn that there are some bad guys out there. And they can be very vulnerable because they take responsibility for themselves and then they take over responsibility for others. Related to that are people that are people pleasers. Along with that, people with weak boundaries. When you're getting gaslighted, somebody's trying to put something in your head, and we have to have pretty firm boundaries to say, I don't think so. I don't agree with that. That's not me. That's not how I feel. It's not what I said. But people that don't have good boundary skills are very susceptible to this. If I don't have a fence around my yard, somebody can throw trash into my yard. Well, they're devaluing and gaslighting statements are trash in your yard. Some people don't feel secure of who they are and what they think and what they feel and what their opinions are and all that. That has to be built. And if it was torn down through trauma and other experiences, we kind of like don't have a secure sense of self and can be very, very susceptible to being convinced. Sometimes we're naive. We haven't had experiences of this. We don't know how to deal with this. And then a big one, a really, really big one, is when you're in a relationship where there's unequal power. And it can be institutional power or real, even authority power, like a boss, for example, or somebody that has a power relationship where they have leverage. They can use that leverage to gaslight. And that can be real power, like in a, you know, employment situation, for example, or it can be psychological power. And psychological power can come when somebody is more aggressive than you. So this is a real deal. And so it's very, very important, especially in parenting, to help build the sense within children where they can't be gaslighted, but also in our adulthood, because as we learned way back when, everybody's got an inner child, right? That child is wounded. That child's present when you're talking to somebody when you're 40 years old. So this stuff that happens can tap into all of that. And it is a big deal. And we need to kind of, for lack of a better word, get stronger, grow up, get mature, get ripe, get defended, get armored, get empowered. I don't mean to dominate others. I mean to hold on to yourself.
Yeah, that's a lot of good stuff. Really, there's a lot of things. We could probably spend 2 or more sessions talking about some of the things that you talked about there. What helped?
Yeah.
What jumped out at you?
Well, I mean, I like the whole thing about having weak boundaries, then people are throwing trash in your yard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard for me to set firm boundaries, but, you know, I don't want to pick up other people's trash. So, you know,
Wait a minute, you got a couple teenagers. You're always picking up other people's trash. What are you talking about?
you know what it reminds me of is when we were younger, we lived in a condo complex,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have a cat, but we often had cat poop in our yard.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I hear you talking. So,
I'm not saying gaslighters are like cats.
well, you never know. So, oftentimes they're pooping in your yard, creating a stink. So,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
I really like that observation that he made about power differentials,
Yeah.
because, in particularly in employment situations, and both you and me have gone through employment situations where we were betrayed and gaslit along the way, and that and so there's a real power differential there, because you're dependent upon that other person for your livelihood, or maybe so much more, and that that can be very difficult. We're talking about vulnerabilities, and one of the things that, now, you're a nice person. You're probably nicer than me.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I think no probably about it, except in your treatment of me. but but you're a nice person, and gaslighters leverage that against us,
Mm.
and oftentimes they do that by being aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And so when nice people are met with aggressive people,
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes it kind of knocks them back on their heels.
Yeah.
What we have to do as nice people, and I consider myself a nice person even if you don't.
I didn't say you weren't nice. It's just I'm nicer.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, all right, I'll give you that. Is that all right? So you have to pay attention to this lesson. Is that when nice people are met with aggressive people,
Mm-hmm.
nice people then have to learn how to be properly assertive.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise, an aggressive person is going to just continue to exploit your niceness. But if you meet aggressiveness with assertiveness,
Yeah.
that you can what's the difference between the two, by the way?
So this is just something that came up when you were saying that I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking is it if you don't stand up for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then an aggressive person will walk all over you.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and so I mean, being assertive is basically, um, standing up for yourself versus being aggressive is being uh, authoritative or talking down to somebody and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
angry, yelling, that sort of thing.
Here's an assertive statement. No.
Hmm.
And and I don't know what it is about us is that we are oftentimes, you know, afraid of telling people no.
Yeah.
But and it's one of the things that Cloud and Townsend and others have said is that no is a complete sentence.
Hmm.
And and then an aggressive person will come back and say, why not? And one of my counters in a situation like that is that, well, I just I just stated that I don't want to. Will you respect that?
Yeah.
You know, because I and you really don't owe an aggressive person an explanation.
Hmm.
You know, I have my reasons, but right now I don't feel comfortable sharing those.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so and
You know.
staying. Go ahead. Oh, I do
Uh,
want to say this. Staying
yeah.
centered with I statements is
Hmm.
that I'm not comfortable with this, or
Hmm.
that I'm not comfortable when you talk to me like that. You
Yeah.
know, and so it would help me if we could redirect this conversation in a way that we both could feel comfortable about. You know,
Right.
but go ahead. You were going to say something.
So one of the things he said, this ties into both he made a point about naive people, like
Mm-hmm.
had an experience with it before, and then also people in a work or a power imbalance, is a lot of times within the church, you think like the people who maybe know more than you or have been there longer than you or whatever,
Yeah.
um, are going to be people that are trustworthy, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not always the case. And I after my situation, I went through and I had like done a lot of searching in the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
I found this one in Romans chapter 16, and I think it's verse 18. It says, keep away from them, for such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By
Yeah.
smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people.
Wow, that's good. Where is that? Romans 16 what?
Verse 18.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's this other one I just wanted to share real quick, too, is in Acts 20, 29
Mm-hmm.
and 30. Jesus says, I know that after I leave, savage wolves will come in among you and will not spare the flock. even from your own number men, will arise and distort the truth in order to draw away disciples after them.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and I guess like I used to think like, oh, people in the church are typically trying to be good people and all that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. But it wasn't until I had this last experience where I was like, Jesus uses the word savage wolves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They are
Mm-hmm.
like merciless. They are sneaky. They are, predators in
Mm-hmm.
there. And I think sometimes we like um another another thing that made me weak and vulnerable to the gaslighting was I was looking for an opportunity, and I think that person saw that I was looking for
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity and presented me with a worm, but it had a hook in it,
Yeah.
and so
Mm-hmm.
I took the bait thinking, "Oh, I'm getting what I want,"
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it cost me so much.
Yeah, well, you got what you needed, I guess. Seriously, is that a lot of times in life, God allows us to go through the school of hard knocks so that
Mhm.
we can learn the lesson. And
Mhm.
I know I've learned my lesson. And one of the things that I think is really dangerous is that when we when we've gone through the school of hard knocks and
Mhm.
it's knocked us down, or we then become bitter and withdrawn and are and less than, we've allowed their evil. There's that passage of scripture in Romans 12:21 that says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And
Yeah.
so, and one of the ways that you overcome evil is with proper assertiveness. Jesus was an extremely assertive person,
Mhm.
but he wasn't an aggressive man, you know.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, there's a lot of good stuff there. Let's go ahead and wrap up. Like I said, we could talk more, but we could talk, about the desire for approval. And a big one for me is that, I just like to avoid conflict. I don't like conflict. And
Mhm.
so sometimes, we're people pleasers, or we keep the peace rather than, like what Jesus says, blessed are the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers. He doesn't, endorse peacekeeping. So,
Yeah.
anything else before we wrap up?
Yeah, my one final thought is that if this has happened to you, or if you've been in situations where you've been, attacked by a savage wolf in the church or
Mm,
anything like that, is, stay the course and, during a time of testing, prove that you are one of the seeds that's in the good soil.
yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
don't let those kind of things rattle you, and
Mm-mm.
you know, don't let any root of bitterness grow up that chokes you out, or anything like that. So keep persevering. If this has happened to you, then
Yeah,
I'm sorry, and it stinks, and hope that you get somebody who can be supportive
yeah.
and everything, but don't let it knock you down and out.
There you go. Hey, thanks again for sharing your thoughts. I'm going to wrap up right now. And so, as I've said before, that we really do want to help folks to help learn the skills that they need to have successful relationships. There's an interesting thing, and even Karen talked about this in our conversation today, is that even when we are bringing good qualities into relationships, that we're nice and we're gentle and that we're kind with others, and that that there's a lot of positive things, is that people will leverage that. And so what we have to learn is to not just be nice, but to learn some of these additional skills as far as being assertive and having healthy boundaries and learning how to communicate when we're not comfortable and things like that. And so that's what this is all about, is that, and that's what and you thought it was the hokey pokey. What it's really all about is growing into maturity, into being the man or woman that God has called you to be. So thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you the next time around. Bye-bye for now.